Hello guys, welcome back to Boring Historian. Tonight we're diving headfirst into the surprisingly scandalous world of Victorian tea parties. Imagine delicate china, swirling steam, the clinking of spoons against porcelain, but beneath the veneer of polite conversation, a whole universe of hidden anxieties, bizarre remedies, and shocking secrets simmer. What you're about to hear might stick with you long after you've drifted off to sleep. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. All right. Find your quiet space, let the outside world fade, and let's begin our journey. You're settling into a plush velvet armchair, the faint scent of Earl Grey tickling your nose. Around you, ladies in elaborate gowns whisper secrets, their laughter echoing softly. Gentlemen in crisp suits sip their tea with an air of studied nonchalance, but their eyes dart around, assessing, analyzing. You're an unseen observer, privy to the hushed conversations, the carefully concealed anxieties, the strange remedies passed off as cures. This isn't your average historical recounting. It's a journey into the hidden heart of Victorian society, as revealed through the seemingly innocuous ritual of the tea party. This was, after all, the era that simultaneously birthed the germ theory of disease and still clung to the belief that arsenic could clear your complexion. The rise of tea in Victorian England was nothing short of meteoric. From a luxury enjoyed by the elite, it rapidly became a staple in every home, a symbol of domesticity and social status. You see the ornate tea sets passed down through generations, each a testament to a family's wealth and aspirations. Think of those impossibly thin china cups, delicate enough to shatter at the slightest touch, of visual representation of the fragility of Victorian ideals themselves. This seemingly simple beverage became the centerpiece of social gatherings, transforming from a simple drink into a potent symbol of social hierarchy and cultural identity. Historians still argue whether the ubiquity of tea truly reflected a rising standard of living or merely masked underlying anxieties about social mobility and economic inequality. The sheer volume of tea consumed speaks volumes, though, doesn't it? You can almost taste the bitterness and the sweetness of it all, can't you? But beneath the surface of polite chatter and dainty sandwiches, a whole host of strange practices and beliefs flourish. You overhear whispers of crocodile dung sunscreen being used to protect delicate complexions from the harsh sun. Yes, you read that right. Crocodile dung. It's a testament to the lengths people went to in the pursuit of beauty, showcasing a remarkable blend of desperation and misplaced faith. One can't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all. And yet, beneath the surface humor, there was a very real fear of the sun's aging effects, a deep-seated anxiety that resonated throughout society. This, naturally, spurred a wildly lucrative market of often ineffective, sometimes downright dangerous, beauty remedies. There is something intrinsically funny and yet profoundly sad about this, isn't there? It's like a historical Monty Python sketch, but with genuine human desperation at its core. You're now seated at a mahogany table, the polished surface reflecting the gaslight's gentle glow. Around you, the air is thick with the scent of jasmine tea and freshly baked scones. But maintaining appearances at a Victorian tea party was no simple feat. It demanded a meticulous adherence to an intricate code of etiquette, a complex dance of social expectations and unspoken rules. You feel the weight of those unwritten rules pressing down on you. A single misplaced spoon, a misplaced glance, could shatter the delicate facade of polite society. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen? Well, even applying it incorrectly could be a social faux pas. It was a world where appearances mattered more than anything else. The rules themselves were dizzying. The correct way to hold your teacup, the acceptable topics of conversation, the precise order of serve and each action was laden with meaning. You find yourself agonizing over the correct way to lift your pinky finger while sipping tea. This wasn't mere politeness. It was a form of social currency. A way of demonstrating your social standing and your understanding of the unspoken rules that governed Victorian society. You're almost overwhelmed by the sheer number of social expectations. One wrong move, one misplaced word, and your social standing could be irrevocably damaged. Such high stakes for a simple cup of tea. One can't help but wonder if those anxieties were a symptom of societal constraints or a testament to the strength of social bonds in Victorian society. Take, for example, the act of refusing a second cup of tea. It wasn't simply a matter of personal preference. It was a subtle art form. Refusing too eagerly suggested a lack of hospitality, while accepting too readily might imply a lack of refinement. The Victorian world prized restraint and moderation in all things, even when it came to tea. The entire ritual was a delicate balance act, requiring a sharp awareness of social nuances and an innate understanding of the subtle cues that were exchanged between guests. One might easily imagine how stressful this must have been for the hostess, meticulously orchestrating every detail of the party. Even the simple act of offering a scone could be fraught with unspoken meanings. Historians still argue whether this elaborate etiquette reflected a genuine desire for social harmony or a deeper-seated anxiety about social hierarchies. It was in these seemingly mundane acts that the true essence of Victorian society was revealed. You notice how the way people handled their teacups reflected their social status, their level of self-confidence, and even their deepest insecurities. It was a subtle language, spoken not through words, but through gestures, expressions, and the careful choreography of their movements. The seemingly simple act of drinking tea transcended its practical function, becoming a complex social ritual that was both fascinating and slightly terrifying. The sheer pressure to perform flawlessly must have been exhausting. Perhaps that's why they needed so many cups of tea. Perhaps that's why the addition of a small amount of laudanum to one's tea was, for a time, socially acceptable. After all, who wouldn't need a little help unwinding after a day of navigating such a minefield of etiquette? You lean closer, the low murmur of conversation creating a comforting hum. The aroma of various teas fills the air, Earl Grey, of course, but also infusions you can't quite place. Some of those scents are unexpectedly pungent. Victorian tea wasn't always the refined experience we imagine today. You discover that the ingredients added to tea blends were as varied as the guests themselves. It wasn't just milk and sugar. It was a whole pantry's worth of additions, some practical, some purely decorative, and some downright bizarre. There is something almost magical about the blending of the ingredients, the way that different flavors and aromas combine to create a complex and unique sensory experience. Beyond the usual milk and sugar, you discover that many Victorians added herbs and spices to their tea to add flavor and purported health benefits. Think chamomile for relaxation, mint for digestion, and even cloves for their supposed ability to ward off illness. These additions were often tied to folk medicine and traditional healing practices. You hear a hushed discussion about the benefits of adding rose petals for a lovely aroma and a touch of romance. It was a time of experimentation, a period where the line between culinary practice and medicinal remedy often blurred. There was a certain adventurous spirit to the concoctions, a desire to create something unique and personal. But some additions were far less conventional. You overhear a whispered conversation about the addition of opium to tea for its pain-relieving and mood-altering effects. While not exactly a hidden secret within certain circles, it still adds a layer of intrigue to our image of these genteel gatherings. The use of opium in Victorian society was surprisingly widespread, though its recreational use was frowned upon by the upper classes. It was a bit like the Victorian equivalent of a spike punch, though far more potent and subtly delivered. This underscores the somewhat hazy line between medicine and recreation during this era. One wonders if this was purely a matter of personal preference, or if there were more nefarious motives at play. As the opium trade was closely intertwined with colonial expansion, the inclusion of these unconventional ingredients highlights the era's complex relationship with health and wellness. While medical science was advancing, many people still relied on traditional remedies and folk medicine, often with unpredictable and sometimes dangerous results. You witness, with a certain degree of horrified fascination, the discussion of a remedy using crushed pearls to enhance one's complexion. The pursuit of beauty and health often led to bizarre and sometimes harmful practices. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of these unconventional ingredients reflects a lack of access to modern medicine or a deep-seated distrust of the medical establishment. Whatever the reason, it certainly adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of Victorian culture. And, frankly, it's rather fascinating in its absurdity. The sheer variety of ingredients added to tea, from the mundane to bizarre, painted a vivid picture of Victorian life. And let us not forget the rather alarmingly prevalent belief in the efficacy of arsenic in skin creams. You sip your imaginary tea, the warmth spreading through you as you eavesdrop on the conversations swirling around you. The clinking of china, the rustle of silk dresses, the low hum of polite chatter all create a comforting backdrop to the more unsettling revelations you are privy to. Victorian tea parties weren't just social events. They were also a breeding ground for the latest health fads and, frankly, some truly bizarre cures. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen? That's just the tip of the iceberg. The pursuit of health and beauty in the Victorian era was often a chaotic blend of scientific advancements and time-honored folk remedies, many of them utterly ineffective and sometimes outright dangerous. One popular, albeit questionable, practice was the consumption of various tonics and elixirs. These remedies often contained a cocktail of ingredients, some with legitimate medicinal properties, others completely useless, and a few downright harmful. You overhear a hushed discussion regarding the benefits of drinking a concoction made from crushed beetles, claiming it had miraculous restorative powers. It's a stark reminder that the line between traditional medicine and quackery was often blurred. The desperation for cures, combined with a lack of understanding of basic hygiene and disease transmission, led to a flourishing market for remedies that often did more harm than good. One cannot help but feel a certain sympathy for those seeking relief through such potentially harmful means. The belief in the efficacy of these tonics and elixirs was often driven by a mixture of desperation and faith in traditional remedies. The lack of understanding of the underlying mechanisms of disease meant that people often turned to folk remedies and homeopathic treatments. You witness someone describing, with fervent conviction, their miraculous recovery from a debilitating illness after consuming a potion containing ground-up unicorn horn. Of course, there were no unicorns. Still, the sheer power of belief is noteworthy. These remedies offered a sense of control in a world where disease and death were ever-present threats. The fact that many of these remedies were completely ineffective or even harmful only served to highlight the desperation of the people who used them. This widespread belief in dubious remedies highlights a key aspect of Victorian society: the tension between faith in traditional practices and the emerging field of scientific medicine. The Victorian era saw significant advancements in medical science, yet many people continued to rely on traditional remedies and folk cures, often without any scientific basis. Historians still argue whether this reflects a lack of trust in the nascent medical profession or a deep-seated cultural preference for traditional healing methods. It was a time of transition, a period where old beliefs and practices clashed with new scientific discoveries. The sheer incongruity of it all scientific advancement, running alongside completely unfounded beliefs, makes the entire historical era almost comedic in its dissonance. It's a testament to the power of belief and the enduring allure of a quick fix. The sugar bowl sits in the center of the table, its gleaming surface reflecting the light. You watch as delicate teaspoons are dipped into it, adding a generous helping of sweetness to already delectable cups of tea. Sugar, in Victorian England, was more than just a sweetener. It was a status symbol, a luxury item that represented wealth and social standing. You notice the distinct difference in the quantity of sugar used, a subtle social indicator that speaks volumes. The sheer abundance of sugar available to some, contrasted sharply with the scarcity experienced by others, creates a stark social commentary. Sugar, imported from far-flung colonies, was a costly commodity, making it a marker of social class. The amount of sugar someone added to their tea was a subtle, yet telling indicator of their economic status. A generous helping of sugar demonstrated wealth and refinement, whereas a more modest addition suggested a more modest lifestyle. This seemingly insignificant detail served as a quiet but powerful symbol of social hierarchy within Victorian society. It's a fascinating glimpse into the subtle ways in which social status was communicated and maintained. Imagine the silent judgments made based on how much sugar one used. It was a subtextual conversation taking place in every teacup. The social implications of sugar extended beyond its mere use as a sweetener. The sugar trade itself was intricately tied to the colonial enterprise, fueling the exploitation of resources and labor in far-off lands. The sweetness of sugar masked a bitter reality, the dark side of colonialism, and its devastating consequences for those who toiled under often brutal conditions to produce. This stark juxtaposition, the sweetness of tea, coupled with the bitterness of its origins, highlights the complexities and contradictions of Victorian society. One can't help but wonder about the weight of such awareness for the upper classes who consumed these goods with such carefree abandon. Historians still argue whether the widespread consumption of sugar, and the social status it conferred, was a true indication of improved living standards for the broader population, or merely a superficial display of prosperity that masked the pervasive inequalities present within Victorian society. It's a question that invites us to examine the relationship between economic growth and social justice within historical contexts, a question with profound implications that continue to resonate in our own time. This seemingly simple ingredient, sugar, becomes a microcosm of the era, a lens through which to examine its complexities and contradictions, exposing both its glittering heights and its hidden depths. You observe a young woman delicately dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief. She's pale, almost translucent. Her cough a delicate tremor that barely disturbs the polite chatter around her. In the Victorian era, certain illnesses weren't just ailments. They were fashionable. The pursuit of a delicate, almost ethereal appearance led some to cultivate an air of fragility, often exaggerating or even feigning illness to attract sympathy or attention. It was a peculiar form of social performance, a way to gain a certain kind of social capital. It's unsettling to consider the extent to which illness was used as a social tool. This phenomenon, often referred to as fashionable illnesses, involved a deliberate cultivation of symptoms, often to garner attention or sympathy. Conditions like neurasthenia, a nervous disorder characterized by fatigue and emotional instability, became almost badges of honor amongst certain social circles. The sufferers weren't necessarily malingering. Rather, they were expressing their anxieties and frustrations through the language of illness. You might find yourself feeling a strange mix of empathy and revulsion. Empathy for the very real suffering behind the performance, and revulsion at the social manipulation that was taking place. It was a complex social dynamic, a morbid twist on the pursuit of social status. The association of specific illnesses with certain social classes is also telling. Certain ailments were considered respectable, associated with the upper classes, while others were relegated to the lower classes and stigmatized. Tuberculosis, for example, was often romanticized in literature and art, associated with a certain aesthetic appeal, while other diseases faced widespread stigma and societal rejection. You might notice how the language used to describe these illnesses changes depending on the social status of the person affected. It's a stark reminder of the way in which societal attitudes shape the perception and treatment of disease. Historians still argue whether fashionable illnesses were a genuine reflection of the psychological pressures faced by women in Victorian society, or a conscious attempt to manipulate social dynamics for personal gain. Was it a form of subtle rebellion, a way of expressing discontent through the language of illness? Or was it simply a calculated strategy to gain attention and sympathy? It's a complex question with no easy answer, but one that highlights the fascinating interplay between social expectations, personal expression, and the experience of illness in Victorian England. The delicate balance between genuine suffering and social performance remains a source of academic debate. The low hum of conversation rises and falls, a tapestry woven with threads of polite chatter and whispered secrets. You find yourself drawn into the undercurrents of the conversation, the unspoken words and veiled allusions that reveal the true nature of the gatherings. Victorian tea parties were not merely occasions for polite conversation. They were fertile ground for gossip, scandal, and the subtle dissemination of secrets. The seemingly innocuous setting provided a perfect cover for the exchange of information, both true and fabricated. You sense the weight of unspoken words, the veiled meanings hidden beneath the surface of polite conversation. The intricate etiquette surrounding tea parties created a unique atmosphere conducive to the spread of rumors and scandalous revelations. The close proximity of guests, the hushed tones, and the very act of sharing a private moment over tea all contributed to the creation of a conspiratorial environment. You notice the sideways glances, the furtive whispers, the meaningful pauses, all subtle signals indicating that more than just the weather was being discussed. This carefully curated atmosphere served as the perfect stage for social drama, a setting where reputations were made and broken. The social dynamics of Victorian society fostered a culture of secrecy and intrigue. The rigid class structure and the emphasis on social decorum often led to the concealment of uncomfortable truths. Tea parties provided a safe space, or at least a seemingly safe space, for the sharing of secrets that would never have been uttered openly. You overhear a snippet of a conversation about a scandalous affair, the details carefully veiled in innuendo and carefully chosen words. It's fascinating to consider the way in which gossip functioned as a form of social control within Victorian society. Historians still argue whether the gossip exchanged at Victorian tea parties served to reinforce or undermine the rigid social structures of the time. Did it serve to strengthen social bonds through shared secrets and mutual understanding? Or did it contribute to the fragmentation and undermining of social stability through the spread of damaging rumors and unfounded accusations? The ambiguous nature of gossip makes it a complex subject to analyze, adding another intriguing layer to our understanding of social dynamics in the Victorian era. The delicate balance between camaraderie and betrayal makes these secret exchanges all the more compelling. The delicate china cups, the fragrant tea, the dainty sandwiches all mask a darker reality. You realize that the seemingly idyllic world of Victorian tea parties rests upon a foundation of exploitation and injustice. The very tea itself, a symbol of refinement and social grace, carries with it the bitter taste of colonialism and the suffering of those who produced it. You begin to see the tea leaves not simply as a beverage, but as a testament to the far-reaching consequences of empire. The vast tea plantations of India, Ceylon, present-day Sri Lanka, and China were built on the backs of exploited labor. Millions of people worked in brutal conditions, often for meager wages, to produce the tea that had fueled the British Empire's insatiable thirst for the beverage. The wealth and luxury enjoyed by the Victorians at their tea parties came at a steep price paid by countless individuals in far-off lands. You feel a sense of unease, the idyllic image of the tea party, now tainted by the knowledge of its origins. The British East India Company, a powerful force in shaping the global tea trade, used its influence to secure favorable trade deals and control the production and distribution of tea. This control allowed them to extract maximum profit from the colonies, while minimizing the benefits that accrued to the local populations. The system was inherently exploitative, perpetuating a cycle of dependency and impoverishment in the colonies. It's a sobering reminder that the prosperity of one group often comes at the expense of another. You realize that the history of tea is far more complex than a mere tale of elegant parties and refined tastes. Historians still argue whether the British Empire's exploitation of colonial labor in the tea industry was a necessary evil for the economic advancement of Britain, or a morally reprehensible system of oppression that caused widespread suffering. Injustice. It's a debate that compels us to confront the ethical implications of empire and its lasting legacy on the world. The idyllic image of the Victorian Tea Party is shattered by the harsh realities of its origins, revealing a far more complex and problematic history than previously imagined. The lingering taste of injustice leaves a bitter aftertaste. You've spent the evening immersed in the world of Victorian tea parties, a world of delicate china, whispered secrets, and hidden histories. The seemingly simple act of drinking tea, you've discovered, reveals a complex tapestry of social norms, health anxieties, and the darker undercurrents of empire. But the story doesn't end here. There are further layers to uncover, more secrets to unearth. We've only just begun to scratch the surface of this fascinating and often contradictory era. As the evening progresses, you find yourself drawn to the seemingly insignificant details: a chipped teacup, a faded stain on a tablecloth, a half-forgotten recipe scrawled on a piece of parchment. Each object holds a story, a whisper from the past, a glimpse into the lives and experiences of those who gathered around the tea table. The details, often overlooked, provide the richest insights into the social dynamics, the personal struggles, and the subtle power plays that shaped Victorian society. Even the most mundane object possesses an intrinsic historical significance. The social anxieties of the Victorian era, as revealed through the lens of the Tea Party, are strikingly similar to the anxieties we face today. The desire for social acceptance, the pursuit of beauty and health, the fear of illness and death. These are universal themes that transcend time and place. You find yourself reflecting on the parallels between Victorian society and your own, recognizing familiar patterns and anxieties in a historical context. The anxieties might be expressed differently, but the underlying human experiences remain strikingly similar. Historians still argue about the extent to which Victorian society was truly as rigid and repressive as it is often portrayed. Was it a time of unprecedented social change, or was it a period of intense conservatism and social control? The nuances and complexities of the era defy easy categorization, demanding a nuanced and critical analysis of the historical source. The Tea Party, you realize, provides a microcosm of this larger debate. The seemingly simple act of sharing tea reveals a wealth of social complexity. It's a lens through which we can examine the broader historical context and understand the intricacies of Victorian society. You're starting to feel the gentle pull of sleep, the images of the Victorian Tea Party fading slowly into the background. The scent of Earl Grey lingers in the air, a phantom aroma that evokes the memories of the evening's revelations. But as you drift towards slumber, you recall a specific detail that particularly caught your attention: the remarkable variety of teacups presented these gatherings. It wasn't just about the tea itself. It was about the presentation, the display of wealth and taste through the china used. Each teacup, you remember, represented a statement, a subtle declaration of social status and personal style. The intricate designs, the delicate materials, the sheer variety of shapes and sizes, all communicated something about the owner and their place within the social hierarchy. The teacup became a miniature canvas, reflecting not only the aesthetic sensibilities of its owner, but also their social standing and economic power. You can still practically feel the cool, smooth surface of a fine porcelain cup against your fingertips. Beyond the social status implications, the teacups themselves often held personal significance. Family heirlooms, gifts from loved ones, or souvenirs from travels, each cup carried with it a history, a narrative that unfolded beyond its decorative surface. You imagine the stories whispered by the chipped edges, the faded gilding, the small cracks that hint at a lifetime of use and affection. There's a poignant beauty in the idea that each teacup holds a unique history, a narrative etched into its very being. Historians still argue about the extent to which material culture, such as the teacups and other accoutrements of the tea party, accurately reflects the social and economic realities of Victorian society. Did the ostentatious displays of wealth mask underlying inequalities? Or did they serve as a genuine indicator of rising standards of living? The interpretation of material culture remains a complex and fascinating field of study, one that often reveals more about the biases and perspectives of the researcher than about the objects themselves. The simple teacup once again becomes a source of insight and contemplation. The flickering gaslight seems to dim as you continue your descent into slumber, the images of the Victorian tea party softening, becoming less distinct. Yet, the echoes of conversation linger, the whispers of secrets still audible in the quiet of your mind. You recall the discussions about health and illness, the anxieties surrounding disease and mortality, and the strange remedies employed to combat them. It was a world where the line between science and superstition was often blurred, a world where hope and despair intertwined in a delicate dance. The prevalence of illness in Victorian society, you remember, was deeply intertwined with the living conditions of the time. Overcrowding, poor sanitation, and a lack of understanding of basic hygiene all contributed to the spread of disease. The lack of effective medical treatments often left people at the mercy of their ailments, relying on remedies that were often ineffective and sometimes dangerous. You imagine the fear and uncertainty that must have accompanied such a precarious existence. The vulnerability of the human body in the face of illness was a constant, ever-present reality. The anxieties surrounding death were equally pervasive. The high infant mortality rate, the prevalence of infectious diseases, and the ever-present threat of epidemics all contributed to a pervasive sense of mortality. Death was not a distant abstraction. It was a constant companion, a reality that shaped the lives and choices of ordinary people. You reflect on the fragility of life, the realization that even the most privileged members of society were not immune to the ravages of disease. Historians still argue about the relative importance of social factors versus individual choices in determining health outcomes in the Victorian era. Was it the poor sanitation and living conditions that primarily fueled the spread of disease? Or did individual choices and behaviors play a more significant role? The complexity of the issue makes it difficult to draw definitive conclusions, though it's clear that multiple factors contributed to the health challenges faced by the Victorian population. The very act of attending a tea party, you reflect, could represent both a social occasion and a potential exposure to disease. The sounds of the Victorian tea party are fading now, replaced by the gentle rhythm of your breathing. The images are blurring, the details softening, yet the essence of the experience remains. You remember the hushed conversations, the veiled secrets, the unspoken anxieties that permeated the seemingly polite gatherings. You recall the sheer volume of information exchanged, both factual and fictional, and the subtle ways in which social hierarchies were reinforced and challenged. The role of women in Victorian society, as revealed through the lens of the tea party, was complex and multifaceted. On the one hand, they were confined to the domestic sphere, their lives largely centered around the home and family. Yet, within those domestic confines, they wielded considerable social and cultural influence. The Tea Party, you realize, was a space where women exercised agency and control, shaping social interactions and influencing the flow of information. The Tea Party provided a stage for women to cultivate social connections, exchange information, and navigate the complex social dynamics of Victorian society. They used the subtle language of etiquette, the carefully chosen words, and the strategic deployment of gossip to exert their influence. The seemingly passive role of hostess belied a significant amount of control and power. You reconsider the idea that women in the Victorian era were powerless or passive. Their influence was often subtle, but deeply impactful. Historians still argue about the extent to which women's roles in Victorian society were constrained by societal expectations, or whether they found ways to subvert those expectations and exercise agency within the existing power structures. It's a debate that continues to shape our understanding of gender dynamics in the historical past. The Tea Party, once again, provides a fertile ground for exploring this intricate question, revealing the ways in which women exercised agency, even within the confines of their prescribed social roles. The power dynamics, once obscured by polite conversation, are now illuminated by the lens of historical analysis. The gentle lull of sleep is drawing you in, the images of the Victorian Tea Party becoming increasingly hazy, the details fading into the soft embrace of unconsciousness. Yet, certain aspects remain vividly clear. The sheer variety of food and drink served, the elaborate preparations undertaken, and the social significance of each element presented. The Tea Party, you remember, was not merely a social occasion. It was a carefully orchestrated performance, a display of wealth, taste, and social standing. The food served at these gatherings was often as elaborate as the etiquette surrounding their consumption. Sandwiches, cakes, scones, pastries, each item was meticulously prepared, showcasing the culinary skills of the hostess and her staff. The presentation of the food was as important as its taste. The arrangement of dishes, the use of decorative elements, and the overall aesthetic appeal all contributed to the overall impression. You recall the sheer artistry involved in the creation of these miniature culinary works of art. The choice of food and drink also reflected the social status of the hostess and her guests. The inclusion of exotic ingredients, such as imported fruits and spices, demonstrated wealth and access to global resources. The quality of the ingredients and the complexity of the dishes served as subtle indicators of social standing. You recall the delicate balance between abundance and restraint, a carefully calibrated display of wealth and taste that would have been instantly understood by the guests. Historians still argue about the extent to which food and drink served as a means of social signaling in Victorian society. Was it a genuine reflection of economic realities, or was it merely a performative display of wealth and status? The interpretation of culinary practices within a historical context remains a complex endeavor, requiring a careful examination of social and economic factors. The seemingly simple act of offering a cup of tea or a slice of cake reveals a surprising amount of historical significance. The world of the Victorian Tea Party is fading now, the vibrant colors softening into a muted palette, the sharp edges blurring into a gentle haze. Yet, the lingering scent of tea and the echoes of conversation remain, whispering secrets into the quiet of your mind. You recall the discussions surrounding health and beauty, the anxieties about aging and appearance, and the often bizarre remedies employed to achieve a youthful glow. The pursuit of beauty in Victorian society was often obsessive, fueled by a complex interplay of social expectations, cultural ideals, and anxieties about aging. Women, in particular, faced immense pressure to maintain a youthful appearance, resorting to a variety of remedies, some effective, some ineffective, and some downright dangerous. You remember the discussions about arsenic-based cosmetics, the use of belladonna to dilate the pupils, and the various concoctions designed to whiten the skin. The lengths to which women went to conform to these beauty standards are remarkable, even unsettling. The obsession with beauty was not merely a matter of personal vanity. It was deeply intertwined with social status and economic opportunity. A youthful and attractive appearance could enhance a woman's prospects in marriage, social circles, and even the professional sphere, though opportunities for women in professional life were limited. This societal pressure created a powerful incentive for women to conform to the prevailing beauty standards, regardless of the personal risks involved. You imagine the immense pressure felt by women to live up to these impossible ideals. Historians still argue about the relative influence of societal pressures versus individual agency in shaping women's attitudes toward beauty in Victorian England. Were women merely passive victims of societal expectations, or did they actively participate in the construction and negotiation of beauty standards? The complexities of gender dynamics and the construction of beauty ideals remain a compelling subject of historical inquiry. The seemingly superficial pursuit of beauty reveals a deeper societal dynamic, the intersection of personal choice and societal pressure. The images of the Victorian Tea Party are now dissolving, like wisps of steam rising from a freshly poured cup. The sounds are fading, the conversations becoming indistinct murmurs, yet the essence of the experience lingers, a subtle fragrance in the air of your subconscious. You recall the intricate social rituals, the unspoken rules, and the subtle ways in which power and status were negotiated within the seemingly polite gatherings. The social hierarchy of Victorian society was rigidly defined, yet the dynamics of power were often subtle and nuanced. While overt displays of dominance were generally frowned upon, the subtle ways in which individuals asserted their status were highly significant. The choice of seating arrangements, the order in which guests were served, the topics of conversation engaged in all communicated a great deal about the power dynamics at play. You recall the carefully choreographed dance of social interaction, the silent communication of status and rank. The role of the hostess in managing these power dynamics was crucial. She orchestrated the flow of conversation, controlled the distribution of food and drink, and subtly influenced the overall tone and direction of the gathering. Her ability to manage social interactions, navigate delicate social situations, and maintain a semblance of harmony was a crucial skill in Victorian society. She was a conductor of social harmony, a silent arbiter of power. Historians still argue about the extent to which social hierarchies in Victorian society were static and immutable, or whether individuals could transcend their assigned positions through shrewd social maneuvering and strategic alliances. The rigidity of the social structure was often challenged by individual ambition and social mobility, creating a dynamic interplay of power and influence. The Tea Party, therefore, becomes a microcosm of this larger societal dynamic, a stage where power was exercised and negotiated in subtle yet significant ways. Sleep is drawing closer now, the remnants of the Victorian Tea Party fading into a soft, dreamlike haze. The vivid details are softening, the sharp edges blurring, yet the overall impression remains a world of intricate rituals, hidden anxieties, and unspoken secrets. You remember the discussions about fashion, the importance of appearances, and the elaborate efforts undertaken to maintain a certain social image. Fashion in Victorian society was not merely a matter of personal taste. It was a powerful means of social communication. Clothing choices, accessories, and even the way in which one carried oneself all conveyed significant information about an individual's social status, wealth, and aspirations. The elaborate gowns, the intricate hats, the carefully chosen jewelry, all served as markers of identity and social standing. You reflect on the sheer amount of effort and expense involved in maintaining a fashionable appearance. The pressure to conform to prevailing fashion trends was immense, particularly for women. Deviation from the accepted norms could lead to social ostracism and a loss of status. The pursuit of fashion was not just a personal expression. It was a social imperative, a means of maintaining one's position within the social hierarchy. You picture the women meticulously planning their outfits, agonizing over the smallest details, and striving to create the perfect impression. Historians still argue about the extent to which fashion in Victorian society reflected genuine personal expression or served primarily as a means of social control and conformity. Was it a form of rebellion or a tool of conformity? Was it a form of rebellion or a tool of conformity? The complexities of fashion as a social and cultural phenomenon remain a fertile ground for historical analysis. The Tea Party itself, with its carefully chosen attire, provides a perfect lens through which to examine the intricate relationship between fashion, identity, and social power. The world of the Victorian Tea Party is receding now, the sensory details dissolving into a peaceful quiet. The vibrant colors are fading, the sharp sounds softening, yet the underlying themes remain the intricate social rituals, the hidden anxieties, and the unspoken secrets that shaped these seemingly polite gatherings. You recall the discussions about literature, the popularity of sensation novels, and the ways in which these narratives reflected the anxieties and aspirations of the era. Literature played a significant role in shaping the cultural landscape of Victorian society, providing a means of expressing anxieties, exploring social issues, and disseminating ideas. Sensation novels, with their scandalous plots and morally ambiguous characters, were particularly popular, offering a glimpse into the darker side of Victorian life. These novels often explored themes of social transgression, sexual repression, and the hidden realities beneath the surface of polite society. You remember the hushed discussions about the latest sensation novel, the furtive glances exchanged, and the subtle ways in which these narratives were used to challenge or reinforce societal norms. The popularity of sensation novels reflected a broader societal fascination with the darker aspects of human nature and the anxieties surrounding social change. These novels offered a form of escapism, allowing readers to explore forbidden themes and vicariously experience the thrills of transgression. At the same time, they served as a form of social commentary, reflecting the moral ambiguities and social anxieties of the Victorian era. You imagine the conversations sparked by these novels, the debates about morality and social norms, and the ways in which these narratives shaped public opinion. Historians still argue about the literary merit of sensation novels and their impact on Victorian society. Were they merely escapist fantasies, or did they play a significant role in shaping social attitudes and influencing cultural values? The debate continues, highlighting the complexities of literature's role in shaping social and cultural change. The Tea Party itself, with its whispered secrets and shared narratives, provides a fitting context for considering the significance of sensation novels in Victorian culture. The Victorian Tea Party is fading now, the sensory details dissolving into a tranquil stillness. The vibrant colors are muted, the sharp sounds softened, yet the underlying themes persist: the intricate social rituals, the hidden anxieties, and the unspoken secrets that shape these seemingly polite gatherings. You reflect on the discussions about art, the popularity of pre-Raphaelite paintings, and the ways in which these artistic expressions reflected the aesthetic sensibilities and moral concerns of the era. Art, like literature, played a significant role in shaping the cultural landscape of Victorian society. The pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, with its emphasis on detailed realism, intense emotionality, and moral seriousness, exerted a powerful influence on the art world and beyond. These paintings, often depicting scenes of idyllic beauty or poignant sorrow, captured the aesthetic sensibilities and moral concerns of the time. You remember the hushed conversations about the latest pre-Raphaelite exhibition, the debates about the artistic merit of these works, and the ways in which they were used to express social and political ideas. The pre-Raphaelite style, with its emphasis on detail and emotional intensity, reflected a broader cultural fascination with the past and a yearning for a simpler, more morally certain time. These paintings offered a form of escapism, allowing viewers to escape the harsh realities of industrial society and retreat into a world of idealized beauty and moral clarity. At the same time, they served as a form of social commentary, reflecting the anxieties and aspirations of the Victorian era. You imagine the hushed discussions about the symbolism within these paintings, the interpretations offered, and the ways in which they shaped artistic and intellectual discourse. Historians still argue about the artistic merit of pre-Raphaelite paintings and their impact on Victorian society. Were they merely aesthetically pleasing works of art, or did they play a significant role in shaping social attitudes and influencing cultural values? The debate continues, highlighting the complex relationship between art, society, and culture. The Tea Party itself, with its carefully curated aesthetic, provides a fitting context for considering the significance of pre-Raphaelite art in Victorian culture. The memory of the Victorian Tea Party is fading now, the sensory details dissolving into a peaceful quiet. The vibrant colors are muted, the sharp sounds softened, yet the underlying themes persist: the intricate social rituals, the hidden anxieties, and the unspoken secrets that shaped these seemingly polite gatherings. You reflect on the discussions about science, the rapid advancements in technology, and the ways in which these discoveries both excited and unsettled the Victorian public. The Victorian era witnessed an explosion of scientific and technological advancements, transforming the landscape of society in profound ways. From the invention of the telegraph to the development of anesthesia, these breakthroughs reshaped the way people lived, worked, and interacted with the world around them. Yet, alongside the excitement and optimism generated by these discoveries, there was a pervasive sense of unease and uncertainty. The rapid pace of change, the disruption of traditional ways of life, and the ethical dilemmas posed by new technologies all contributed to a sense of societal upheaval. You recall the hushed conversations about the latest scientific discoveries, the debates about their implications, and the ways in which these advancements shaped public opinion. The anxieties surrounding scientific progress were often intertwined with religious beliefs and moral concerns. The theory of evolution, for instance, challenged long-held beliefs about the creation of the world and the place of humanity within the cosmos. The development of new technologies, such as photography, raised questions about authenticity and the nature of reality. You picture the debates between scientific rationalism and religious faith, the clashes between tradition and modernity, and the ways in which these conflicts shaped the intellectual and cultural landscape of the Victorian era. Historians still argue about the extent to which scientific advancements in the Victorian era were a force for progress or a source of social disruption. Were they primarily beneficial, or did they exacerbate existing inequalities and create new ethical dilemmas? The complexities of scientific progress and its societal impact remain a fertile ground for historical analysis. The Tea Party itself, with its blend of tradition and modernity, provides a fitting context for considering the multifaceted implications of scientific advancements in Victorian society. The last vestiges of the Victorian Tea Party are fading now, the sensory details dissolving into a gentle, dreamlike state. The vibrant colors have softened, the sharp sounds have become muted whispers, yet the essence of the experience lingers, a subtle fragrance in the air of your subconscious. You reflect on the discussions about politics, the rise of democracy, and the ways in which these political changes shaped the social and cultural landscape of the era. The Victorian era witnessed significant political transformations, shifting from a largely aristocratic system to a more democratic society. The expansion of suffrage, the rise of political parties, and the increasing influence of public opinion all contributed to a changing political landscape. Yet, alongside the progress toward greater democracy, there remained significant inequalities and social divisions. The struggles for social reform, the debates about the role of government, and the tensions between tradition and progress all shaped the political discourse of the time. You remember the hushed conversations about political reform, the debates about social justice, and the ways in which these political changes impacted the lives of ordinary people. The anxieties surrounding political change were often intertwined with economic concerns and social inequalities. The rise of industrial capitalism, with its concentration of wealth and power, created new tensions and social divisions. The struggles for workers' rights, the debates about poverty and inequality, and the growing awareness of social injustices all contributed to a climate of political uncertainty. You picture the debates about the role of government in addressing social problems, the conflicts between different social classes, and the ways in which these political tensions shaped the cultural landscape of the Victorian era. Historians still argue about the extent to which the Victorian era was truly a period of progress, or a time of profound social and political contradictions. Was it a time of significant reform and advancement? Or did it merely mask persistent inequalities and unresolved social tensions? The complexities of Victorian politics remain a fertile ground for historical analysis. The Tea Party itself, with its subtle power dynamics and carefully choreographed social interactions, provides a fitting context for considering the multifaceted implications of political change in Victorian society.